So, can you see both Geshe and myself, everybody?
Yep.
Great. And you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, kangatashi dele.
And did you hear Geshe-la's Tashi Dele? All right, we are good to go.
Oh yeah, kangatashi dele. Tani talo judo nyule yari ndoshi yere wachimboyos.
So Tashi Dele, greetings to everybody. And Geshe-la hopes that your study and practice is improving all the time, getting better and better.
Ani tsochi te ta kadi na sana mudu ta te gijitela ta manganzo. Ani mali ta te mali jeto mandawa. Te tsa chimbo ta misa gaya te ka chimbo chi sares.
And one of the things that is really important to be mindful of all the time, to recollect all the time, is that we have the basis of this human rebirth. The basis of this human rebirth that possesses qualities that make it extraordinary, even in comparison to other such rebirths.
Ta ndowa jeli ta mandawa yimba maze mali nune la yom mali ane tawa ane tai te sa ta mali kanga mare sungi ares.
And so out of the 6 different types of beings within samsara, the human rebirth is considered particularly favorable. And out of these different types of human rebirths, this exceptional human rebirth has qualities that makes it stand out from others. And that's what we possess now.
Tantichire. Ta te ta chimbo yamba noji ta ti lekangine te pwe che toge at ta ngazo leka zo te res.
So our task really is to exert ourselves to do the work that is in accord with the preciousness of the opportunity that we have through such a rebirth.
Tzipi ta po te ta tzi khoi ja chi pharo lo pha. Ja chi pharo lo pha mando wa chi ja so no lo ta ta se te mo ta nyana zo te de na ta ko tani chine toge res.
So if we are going onto a boat, right, and we want to cross a lake or an ocean, it's not really, doesn't make a lot of sense to just relax on the boat and look over the side at the fish. What we want to do is make sure that we sail the boat so that it is able to reach our destination, able to reach the other shore.
Ta ja so no lo tsumo de chene ta khoi no lo kho ja sa don da wa tene ki wo do chine ta ya lele chine go yo are tene zo ti pharil khoi ja chi pharul ndo ge ya ta nga zo mi chimbo chi res.
So this kind of rebirth that we want, which is like the ship that is in the ocean of samsara, the ocean of cyclic existence, we want to make sure that the ship is equipped and steered so that it can get us to that shore of liberation.
Ta jise karare sana ngaru sunya du che kadi ina bane dewa tembo chi to kange ped mewa chin dewa yo ares.
And this really relates to a kind of a very basic wish or a very basic instinct within our mind, which is day and night, this wish to be able to achieve lasting happiness and to avoid even minor suffering.
Ta ma to khoi dewa gugu yo are tene ina khoi dewa ha lebi tene ya pi ta po za chimbo da tembo sin zuni chira de yo mares.
So, of course, samsaric or this worldly happiness is something important, something that we can enjoy, but what we must understand is that it is ultimately not reliable. It is ultimately not very lasting.
Ta pe ni ji wo ja yo ares. Khowal kaze pi ta po to te za chimbo to tene deshi kaze yo ba yise na yo. No kal nda pe ma no ji res. Da.
Oh.
Da ji yo to ne che to kaze nda na yo.
Yeah.
Konzo chi la mando ya ma to ko ya do ya ma dus.
Korwegi dewa dikwa.
Yeah,
hakusun. And so chasing after samsaric happiness, there's the analogy that chasing after this samsaric happiness is much like shooting an arrow into the empty sky. The arrow may ascend to quite a height, but eventually it is going to fall back down to earth. It's not going to last all that long.
Ta kaze mo kaze yo che to tu wa ina yo ko chin do ya chin don do gre che to do ya ro was is na man so ya ina ko so chil male ya chi.
If we look at it from the point of view of the level, of course, these experiences of samsaric or worldly happiness, right, they can be very refined, especially with the things that we can enjoy these days. But the point is that no matter how much you ascend, what sort of peak of happiness you reach within samsara, you'll just enjoy it for a short moment before it ends.
다네서 던지지 돈다와 이자 할레비 템보스는 차침보서 하시라면 그래서 다니까 고 그도 그거 알았어.
So, of course, on the temporary level, we do need these moments of samsaric happiness, but it is important to understand that they are something temporary, something not lasting.
다네서 던지지래. 다 던지지 같으니 다나 거의 같으니 버기니까 그 대시 때 소만하고 지니다 야지 바로를 봐. 거의 바로를 반도한테 다 이렇게 템보시.
So, with this understanding that this samsaric happiness is a temporary happiness, then as we steer our boat across this ocean of samsara, not to get distracted by that, but to make sure that it can reach the shore of liberation.
나로서 그 템바자 첨보서 다 관계 저거 요아래. 다 던지게 템바자 첨보된 예수 그때를 로발은 이지 추잡고. 이 제신이 다 이지 추잡고 시내는 다 대신에 된 거 주송았어.
The ninja dangdeki di go to yakandesre di apo komaso.
야 손질 조된데 예수 그때를 너 가봤더니 이지 추잡고 소소로 발라되는 시내는 드니 tel라되는 대시 시대에 된 거 주송았어.
And if we look at the stories of the past life of the Buddha, we know that it was when he was inhabiting the lower realms, right? On the basis of seeing one of his companions tormented, the suffering that he experienced, he was able to bring forth that unbearable compassion, which was really the beginning of him reaching that state of lasting happiness.
다 때트밖에 제 말이다. 니네 예수 그때를 요아래스.
And actually, it's very clear, right, scripturally, that at that time, that the being who became the Buddha, he first brought forth that great compassion while in the hell realms. And at that particular past birth of the Buddha in that particular realm, we can't say with any certainty where we were, right? It was very possible that we were a human being while the being who became the Buddha was in that unfortunate realm. So we understand, though, that it was through going through those experiences, through those lifetimes, and expanding his love, expanding his compassion, that the being who became the Buddha improved and improved all the way up until enlightenment. And so, if we think about that and reflect back on our situation, we're not in those difficult realms. We are in the realm of migrating beings known as human beings. And from amongst those various human rebirths, we possess one which is exceptional, sometimes called the precious human rebirth. And so we need to understand how on the basis of those conditions, from hour to hour, from day to day, there are so many opportunities to efficiently, vastly accumulate great virtue. And so in the scriptures, the Buddha, in the scriptures it is explained that one who possesses great merit is able to accomplish their aims exactly as they wish, right? This is the importance of that accumulation. So actually, if we keep that verse in mind, this will help us to develop a taste or a liking for virtue, for accumulating virtuous karma, and for working towards accumulating that collection of merit. And so let us begin this task then by taking a moment to place our body and our minds in a peaceful state.
That's good. No to more chade so jide se koro luma te se tingolo se deba ina to te ki woto shawachi tende yares.
Right. So when we do this kind of relaxation exercise, Geshe is just explaining that as we begin the practice, often we're disrupted by discursive thoughts, right? And so when we relax in this way, it lets us tap into the fundamentally neutral character of the mind. And initially, that can give us a feeling of peace.
다데니까 세가와 나로서 다 나세 대하데 세기지스로 요아래 세대 다소 소노 되게 모트안을 개와도 먹게 쇼를 슈트하고 다 먹게 쇼를 또 슈트하고 너네 텔라테는 너도 먹지 요아래.
And so when we talk about, and it's a Tibetan term called namtok. So it's sometimes translated as discursive thought. I don't know how accurate that is, to be honest. We could also say false thinking. We could also say projections. Projection is the word that Lama Yeshe used. I think it's a pretty good one. So what Geshe is saying is that based upon the I and the self, gonda dag seriedi da ngarangi sem seriedi kandesre.
나로서 세기지스로 요아래. 나세 대하데 세대테네 다 녀몬 비쇼를 또 요아래. 자테네 텔라테는 너도 먹지.
So connected with the self, there is this mind, and my mind remains obsessed with the self, and this compels one into affliction, which compels one to the side of affliction and engaging in such activities, and this is kind of the fuel of those projections, right, of that false thinking.
어떤 것도 못 주게 되네 다 셀류마테 거로롱질 힘바 누지 딩걸 가세 다 되게 예서보지.
So if we tap into the mind's nature and its fundamentally neutral character just for a moment, this will help us to relax, to establish that state of peace. So think I'm just going to do that for a moment. So just place yourself in a relaxed state of peace.
하다바 누지 세엔조 물리 사사쇼 가와도 yana kanga sel 노도 kanga sel치 다 탐발하게 싫어요.
I think by tapping into this in the way described, it's a little bit like breathing onto a mirror, and the condensation, initially it might be quite vast, but it slowly dissolves into a final point and then disappears completely. Think, as I tap into the mind's nature, this is what is happening with those projecting thoughts.
maybe 초원 오도 강가 되는 메론 하다바 누지치 세고로 셀류마데 모델 파토서.
Think just like the condensation on that mirror, all of the meaningless projections, the unhelpful thoughts, these gradually dissolve into the fundamentally neutral nature of the basic mind.
Geshe lise shwa ta lele madu mandawa lele abucha so much.
Think in this way, different from before when I started the session, the mind is peaceful, open.
Sem kungkabo nuji, rikabo tsuma nuji, tsishikara jabalina yuta ko.
I've prepared my mind now, which is like a white-colored cloth of raw cotton. And any color that I put onto that cloth, it will take that hue. So in this way, my mind is prepared.
Shishi yasho dabo roje kangalata shidegun june shombatu nijigata sabeyo bujita.
And think the hue or the color that I want to dye this cloth of the mind is the supreme mind that benefits myself and others, that wish to lead beings to a state of peace, the fundamental minds of love and compassion. Our task is to take the mind's fundamental nature of pure luminosity and mix it with these positive qualities of love and compassion, just like water and milk become completely mixed together. May I be able to accomplish this exactly as I wish. To receive blessings, I will make the supplications through the prayers. So we'll begin with the praise to Shakyamuni Buddha. Oh, is someone, Geshe thought someone's trying to tell me something. Is someone trying to tell me something? No? Okay, all right. Just let me know if there is anything.
Chondende deji sheba drachumba yondaba zobe sonje reba dan shasu demba dewa sheba shiden chemba chevu dewe kalo jorwa lana meba ladam minangi demba songe chondende pejawa shakya deva la chanse lo chede kyasu chi Tenpa chondende deshin sheba drachumba yondaba zobe sonje reba dan shasu demba dewa sheba shiden chemba chebu dewe kalo jorwa lana meba ladam minangi tenpa sonje chondende pejawa shakya deva la chanse lo chede kyabsu chi
So we'll do the 7-line prayer to Guru Rinpoche.
zen chögi ngödrönye pema jone jesu kodu kanjo mambu go gegi jesu da jogi jingi lob shir shesu sol guru bema Oma ahum benza guru bema siddhi 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 Oma ahum benza guru bema siddhi
Refuge and bodhicitta.
Chedan sogi chunam la janjo bardu dani gyazuji dagi chenyen gibe sunam gi drola benjir sanje drobar sho Chedan sogi chunam la janjo bardu dani gyazuji dagi chenyen gibe sunam gi drola benjir sanje drobar sho Chedan sogi chenam la janjo bardu dani gyasuji dagi chenyen gibe sunam gi drola benjir sanje drobar sho
오야 다 가로수 도미 샤와다 도미 샤와세나 마데 오다 던지 돈요게 사질라 다 좀바도 니지게 사베다 비다보 당기가 말라바 뭐이 아버지다기 손바치.
So today, as a preliminary practice, Geshe said, but not really a preliminary, could also be the main, we can say that on the basis of the fundamental neutral character, the fundamental character of equanimity of the mind, then our task is to plant within that and nourish also those seeds of love and compassion.
엉이에 내절라요 뭐다 지마지마를 되는 기wo 용거를 배도 용거에서 많이 봤더니 단단히 소소라요 배봐 예라요 배봐 다 야에서 뭐도 또 슬레이나야다 배봐 시워지래 되어레스.
And it's very clear, that often we do this thinking of the benefit that comes in terms of the results at the end. But if we engage in these practices now, then right from now we'll benefit ourselves, we'll benefit others. We will benefit all of the humans and also the animal beings that we encounter on the day-to-day. This is very clear.
다때 펜바시아발라 다가서 가니 펜바 페그레스 펜바 소소게 링고 이스 좋아요 아버지 또 이스 맞죠.
And also this benefit it's not something simple as simple as saying I'm benefiting others, right? It's very much kind of training and redirecting our body, speech, and mind, which allows us to accomplish that benefit.
다 리기샤와 마기샤와 다네 세기샤와 가르 버게 좀 먹어도 뭐 용거야 다때 뉴스 돈이다 나본도야지레스.
And so, a good direction with which to begin is to make sure that our engagements of body, our engagements of speech, and our engagements of mind are going less towards what is unwholesome, less towards non-virtue.
다 공부해야 돼. 릴라 먼저 와도야 돼요. 말이잖아. 다 소소 somebody 요는 되네. 텐데 갈래갈 건조와 텐된 로그라 왔어.
And so when we speak of habits or habituation, because we are habituated, we understand that that's not something that's so easy to change, but if there's a commitment and effort into slowly changing our mind, we begin to progress.
나도 관계 하고 해야 돼. 나도 집에 보게. 계제시고 다 멋진 좋아든 좋아요. 뭐 프로그램 오지래 나왔더니 라게.
So Geshe said that that they have sort of a saying, and maybe also here culturally we have the saying which is like, this is that person's nature, right? They can't help it. They're not able to change. That's their nature. So sometimes you hear this said about people.
가시 할 레비다 보게 계사왔던 보트는 스테이지 녀라 차고이나
가와이나.
다 가와이나.
알레.
아니 다 할 레비 타말 비다고 쳐도야 된디 용기야레스.
But there are many examples of people who maybe didn't possess a lot of qualities, were maybe even very strange or very harmful, but slowly they start to engage in the process of a transformation, and by the end, right, they come out as somebody who is fundamentally good. So there are many examples of this.
다 대포게 비다보야 보지 용하시야 발라 녜니를 다 소소가 다 디세야 보여 베갈 다 제고세나 뭐데 고게 돈이 보게 도게야 같이 뭐지 이사레스.
And so this transformation, really, this happens in connection with, as much as possible, whenever we have a spare moment, whenever we have some time, to start this process of habituation through meditation, right? And the word for meditation, gom, is very much also related to the word for habituation.
다 곰선 곰바시야 와서 곰바시야 발라 다 곰바시야 바이나 더니 갈래 되는 좋아진 거야레스.
So fundamentally, we can think meditate means to habituate. And when something starts to begin to become a habit, then it is easy, right, to progress and to get better and better.
곰 릴라워도 다 거러 가제 보게 비다벌로나 로도다 나워지 나워서나 뭐지 야레스. 배나 미빠진 걸 야보 여기 있는 새.
Yeah.
대도녀들 새 쇼지가 요 될 바체 가르가르 용거도 수조서 세지 그거 야레스.
Yeah, so meditation in terms of how to progress, right? It's good to be consistent. So in the beginning, we'll select an object to focus on, and as we try to focus in on that object, we can notice, or maybe a better word is observe. Just observe what the distractions are that the mind wants to go to as it tries to focus on that object.
다 소노 체코 또야 메다 헬레다 되나 거기니까지도 기워야 될 때야 진짜시라요 말이야.
So this is the practice of meditation that's recommended. Just kind of emptying your mind and trying to think about nothing. This might help a little bit to get more of a peaceful mental state, but it's not going to be something that brings lasting progress or benefit.
다 단다 빼지요. 빼대요 버려 인지면지 세냐 가레스. 그거 자기 관계가 와.
So there's an example that all meditators should keep in mind.
빼나가로서 롱가지는 도가 요나. 다 롱가텔 만요다 차고세나 뭐데 다 논요다 차고 뭐 지여봐 이나.
Nyingatsabo, nyursabo.
나가 차고이나 다 가리나 집어와. 하고서와.
Majakin taporis chensen.
다 그마자케이나 다 단다 담다 좀 뭐요 빠져 뭐요 하나. 다 세지 되게 쪼테 롱가를 여보 다 가레스.
Yes, yeah.
쪼티가.
Yep.
다 이나요 서지 닐 그마도 빠져도 가르가르 용거도 고 여보 다야지 그 야레스.
So the example that's given here is, let's say that you have to make a journey, right? Think about how you made a journey in the old days, maybe. Say that you think you're planning to make a journey, but you know that on the road that you need to travel to get to your destination, there's a lot of maybe strange and dangerous people that you could bump into, maybe even bandits and so forth. So if you want to make this journey successfully, of course, your main mind or your main attention should be on the road. But in the background, there should also be a mind that is observing, to be able to observe if any dangers such as thieves or bandits are kind of trying to approach. Lage. Yeah, so when we talk about mindfulness and prajna or wisdom, right, they're of course mainly going to be connected with that object of meditation. So mindfulness is compared to like the rope that allows us to bring the wandering mind back to the object, and the prajna, the wisdom, is what allows us to be able to see clearly and to eventually cognize the object. And there's another factor in here, shejin, which is called introspection. And it's not as prominent as the other two, but it is something that is introspective, aware of possible obstacles, of different obstacles, for example, different projections, false thinkings that are arising. And so it's on the basis, right, of experimenting with this through the practice of meditation that we know how to use these things properly, right? If introspection is too strong, for example, this can distract us from our object of meditation. So we'll begin just placing the body and mind in a relaxed state. Resting into the neutral equanimity of the fundamental mind. By placing my mindfulness and awareness on the breath, I will reduce unhelpful thoughts and feelings. Breathing in, I'm aware I'm breathing in. Breathing out, I'm aware I'm breathing out. So any unhelpful feelings or any unhelpful projecting thoughts, think that these just dissolve into the fundamental neutral nature of the mind. By tapping into the neutral, equanimous nature of the mind, the body and mind have been placed in peace. The mind's pure luminosity can allow me to see, to comprehend anything. based upon this understanding, I will accomplish great goals. Those beings who are close to me, those beings that I don't know, who are strangers, those beings who I may find difficult, all 6 types of beings within cyclic existence are precious to me. There is not a single one that is an enemy or harming me. Because all of these beings are close to me, are precious to me, how wonderful it would be if they could be completely separated from suffering. How wonderful it would be if they could find a pure and lasting happiness. Develop love and compassion for these beings. Think it is because of their fundamental lack of knowledge of the profound view of emptiness that keeps them circling in confusion and suffering. I will lead them out of that state. In order to truly be able to lead them to that understanding, to that realization and freedom, the best way to do that is for myself to achieve Buddhahood, complete enlightenment. Therefore, for the sake of all sentient beings, may myself, actualize complete enlightenment. Meditate on bodhicitta. So we'll continue. So in order to be able to sort of meet that goal, that aim that we established in meditation, it's not something that is so easy. We need a really kind of vast understanding mind. And in order to be able to achieve that, there are many paths we need to cultivate. And especially if we're new, it's important to understand how all these various paths or practices fit into this fundamental kind of rubric of the paths of the beings of the 3 capacity. And if we understand this, the 3 paths related to the 3 capacities of beings, then any kind of practice or a teaching that we encounter will know exactly how to implement it.
What I yellow and a Moditan, there's a Tandan in the Kachaka, Momo, Chia, is that the
And of course, with that, there are many sort of branch practices, and actually many of these things are things that we can begin trying to cultivate right from now, and many of those will be explained.
So Chitan Hako was not to Kazenta Momo Jungle, Daniel Kazenta Montayar, Dage Tomazo Yalta,
And this text fundamentally, it's related to, well, our own honest reflection. Like we know within us, right, what the projecting minds are that trouble us. We know what kind of the main afflictions are that trouble us. And so having recognized those, then this text will help us in the process of cleansing those, of purifying those.
Oh yeah, that's
So let us begin with the text. For those of you following Words of My Perfect Teacher Padmakara edition, I believe we are towards the end of page 13 at the moment. Oh, Geshe Rinpoche. Re.
Oh, yeah, that didn't move.
Tambodi Tez Droswa.
Yeah, man, Louis.
Tamaombe Netsukola Chikere.
Yeah. Yes, they do cheese, Monda, Samba Jimmy, Inji Jimache, Chicho Tana, Joga, Danda some Tito Chilin to get money what Tendosama. She said, Tasho Truck on Yajanda, Sombi to the Mamba and the other year. Chicho Tana, Noche Chamin, so Chima Shalon to get Manewa, Tachi Shaja, Molo, Sizinda, Stamagumi Nesalatanda, Sendamada, Javato Topa, the Mozo, you are Mares, Magubal, Tanicaretata, Cortata, you are Mares.
Okay. Again, tambo nga load so then
yeah.
Sorry. I just want to read the verses to you before Geshe explains, because I realize not everyone has the text. So we recapped the verse from last time, and then we did a new verse. Your past joys and sorrows are like drawings on water. No trace of them remains. Don't run after them. But should they come to mind, reflect on how success and failure come and go. Is there anything you can trust besides dharma, mani reciters? Your future projects and plans are like nets cast in a dry riverbed. They'll never bring what you want. Limit your desires and aspirations. But should they come to mind, think how uncertain it is when you'll die. Have you got time for anything other than dharma, mani reciters? Okay, that's it. So this uncertainty is really important, and relating to these our futures, right? We make hundreds of plans, right? But we can't be certain, if they'll ever be able to be actualized, if they'll ever be able to come about. So don't grasp at the future.
Dza Rinpoche on the Talosa, Maguba to Bama, the Tela Tuishers, Magupa, Tende Yamar, Tela Tuama,
So what he's saying is that they are like drawings in water, or so Karisung Akomasung, so yeah. So what Geshe Rinpoche is advising is don't be too attached to your future plans, because that can actually trip you up. It can confuse you.
This one, Tintivache, Tajazit.
Tandawa.
Chit Bebarwe. Sizinarwa. Beba Teme, Jila, Chita Sejo, Sheme Jaito, Shaje Nimbo Metamani, Tendosoma, Jito, Tisa Tupin, the Jonda, Tenon Toji, Chika Mashawa.
Your present work is like a job in a dream. Since all effort is pointless, cast it aside. Consider even your honest earnings without any attachments. Activities are without essence. Mani reciters. Di chawagi korla.
Tangaruso Noji Tajito Senamadu, Tagoma Javit in the Garcigarova, and a Tuiso that Pogetso Tawashin Elatano to Damana Momojiares.
So when it's speaking about activities here, it's using a word which is really talking about them as kind of being pointless, which means these are the activities that are happening outside of our meditation session. And we can see that these activities are often tainted with the three poisons of attachment, anger, and so forth, and ignorance.
That Tejigata Poganiambo Tatemba Shinela, Hakosaro Koros Nipa Mebazon, Chatsuma, Temba, no Ganga, Chiki no Shamatona, 아니 배도 뭐 나오지 세시오 나 지칠 다 대노 토지 지금 마샤와 단데 제 도비게 자리 샤도녀래서
Oh, right. Nganso nipala, nganso tamala lesson. So chik dromason.
아
So chik dromason. Geshe la Mr. Verse. So tambo di milam dabo chik dua roa. Then it so chat sama pento mepa par sharo chase. Then it di dromason.
hello sai so deter 마네와 타지 샤죠 몰로 디디니미로와 타지 샤죠 몰로 시진자
Yeah.
아니 베바 데메인지 찔라동 치트 세종 셰메 자이도 자제 님보메도 마네와
So sorry, Geshe skipped ahead a verse, so I want him to bring him back to the previous one. Your present work is like a job in a dream. Since all effort is pointless, cast it aside. Consider even your honest earnings without any attachment. Activities are without essence, mani reciters.
오다니까랑아도 좀메베 초와도 노도라서 뭐뭐서 노도되는 배도문도 스타데지 물로 노지선에 다 봐줘 그래.
So being obsessed with these present activities, this brings forth a lot of thoughts and mental projections, which are, something that are very not useful, that can really hinder us. So seeing the present work as like a dream, we should cast those aside.
다 님보메발 니스미도네 다 봐줘 또 봐지서 그래.
And we're able to kind of set those concerns aside if we're able to see what lacks in essence as lacking in essence. In other words, if we recognize it lacks in essence.
어레 무슨 디기 샤와 있네래. 다 저런다 가로서 다 마다 제니엘도 다 대피때 모주네라고 기소소소 기보메바 먹어서 알아봤어.
And we can see actually it's really related to kind of this obsession with those present works, that a lot of our kind of mental energy and mental projections happen that do not benefit us.
딘디바지 다 당기된 로차밀로 자르와.
Yeah, tamadi lomasonga karin senengamadi lomasong tadalogi.
지토 ngal로 자르와 소소로.
So Geshe read the last verse. He skipped ahead, so I'll read that last verse in English now. Between meditation sessions, learn to control in this way all thoughts arising from the three poisons. Until all thoughts and perceptions arise as the Dharmakaya, this is indispensable. Remembering it whenever you need it, do not give rein to deluded thoughts, mani reciters.
다치 돈비 대다도 리라버진데 진이바 대도 다 대세 도비게 잘했는데.
Yeah, so the previous instruction is a little bit easier. This instruction here is something that's, a little bit for kind of more developed beings maybe.
다치 돈보티가 다 가로서 기본 매봐서 그때 뒤에서 보게 시원다고 지와라. 왔. 다대 가로 슈체가 요는 다 대파.
So in terms of our present activities, right, we can see that these are these activities are often kind of tainted or leading us to the three poisons, and this kind of leads to things that are unhelpful, so we have to put those aside.
가정 안조 어느 뒤에서 거기 누워서 뒤에서 가르쳐. 뒤에서 이장인 줄 모르는 거 하다지. 간조 리세비 바체 저거 놀아 요반 노지레스. 너무 가르치 제가 이나 뒤 년보 때문에 봐 가도 좀 가래.
So we can see actually how that really relates to the four obstacles to the four. So we can see how these afflictions, right? This talk of the afflictions in our activities. This relates to what Geshe mentioned before about the four obstacles preventing activation of the lineage. So one of those was strong afflictions, right? So understanding that then, what we do is we see which of those afflictions is more prominent and we undertake the antidotes to reduce it.
다 되는데 아니 다 친이빠테 데노토지 지금 마샤와 세대한테 나로서 노아요도 다 하더라. 다는 학교가 뭐샤와다고 지기가
So, between meditation sessions, learn to control in this way all thoughts arising from the three poisons until all thoughts and perceptions arise as the Dharmakaya. So this is really kind of talking from the higher level.
세시오 노아 토지 지기가 다 노아라고 마샤바다.
So until all of the thoughts and perceptions through our training in deity yoga are able to arise as the Dharmakaya, then those discursive thoughts and so forth are not of much benefit.
다데 지요티 야테 세토레도 와스 노아 강가 셀 노아 강가 로로 치기가 노아 다 모두 던도서도 서스 버게 통화이나요 다 라도 던지가 노아샤야.
Yeah, so from the tantric perspective, right, the sort of internal thoughts and feelings that are arising, we understand these to be, in essence, the dharmakaya. And then on the outer level, the different human beings and other beings that we're encountering, we understand them as being manifestations of the deity. So that's how that is practiced in this context. So of course, those practices are not easy, and those are things that will come about a little bit later. So what we want to do actually is to, through training in these practices, to cease those thoughts and perceptions that are afflicted, and to try to train in arising those thoughts and perceptions as manifestations of the Dharmakaya. So, to make this a little bit easier, what we could think is any kind of thought or perception that is arising, it lacks inherent existence. It is fundamentally empty. This can be like a bridge to having it arise as the Dharmakaya.
Oh, that and this one.
Los.
Chatu Yeva Mato Maniwa Stenda Chomebe Choato Noto the tree Lomombole Tissues Sechinema Mandoa is.
So do not give rise to deluded thoughts, Mani reciters. Don't know that I would really say deluded thoughts. I would say to those projections, to those kind of constructions. So basically, trying not to let those arise in the mind, Mani reciters.
Oh, the alien because see it, what? I yell, Tigote. Magopa in the Massa, Magopa in the Sana, Dawa Trapi Padonda, she is.
And then it is also said, don't invite the future. If you do, you're like the father of famous moon.
Oh, that do you don't know.
Yes. And so this leads us in then to a story which is explained in the text.
Ne mo poshiki, ne moto, neba, ne the lune, din the da, koroti go the nyani, ane, tangi, ne, the la joshi, Moshe Mombogun. Di chumashi josa, there Pashijung Yabashietes, Peti Mila Kondo, no Zana, Dawasha Shui, ni Peti me Dawa Trapa, Dagonyon Bikani, Nature Lung, she sit a chene, Korogatin the Hui, Sebai.
This refers to the story of a poor man who came across a large pile of barley. He put it in a big sack, tied it to a rafter, and lay down beneath it and started to daydream. This barley is going to make me really rich, he thought. Once I'm rich, I'll get myself a wife. She's bound to have a boy. What shall I call him? Just then the moon appeared, and he decided to call his son Famous Moon, Ngodrup. However, all this time a rat had been gnawing away at the rope that was holding up the sack. The rope suddenly snapped, the sack fell on the man, and he was killed.
So
actually, this story is one that's quite famous, right? It's recounted in many places.
So
what it's really showing is, thinking so much about the future, planning so much about the future, we're not sure that it's going to be something that benefits us, right? Here we see quite clearly it doesn't always.
That much than the Shas was name of Yapochi Roberts. That need the gesture that cook in the Yanilla Teapo or Chitanilla. That in the Tamaga, Yakasas, and Berinda, which is also Catula Taj of a race.
Yeah.
Don the Taki more to Nelatane. Coros Tash Bocha, and a Chemechile, Telepogici, or that and the Pogati meal Cartaga, sorry, Sholone Dawashan and Daigate, Tunlega, what the water about Tasha.
Yeah, so we see that actually this is a man who was lucky, right? He unexpectedly came across some wealth, and then he was thinking about what he was going to do with this wealth. He protected it, tied it to like a rafter. Then he was thinking how now that he was wealthy, he would be able to find his ideal wife, and he would be able to give birth to a son. And then he was kind of caught in these elaborations. And at that moment, he saw the moon shining outside. So he thought, I'm going to name my son Vajrayāna, famous moon.
다 단디 지가 지지지가 인들 루다트 파산엘레 어때마치는 그런 걸 마치 쉬는데 그거 세야바네.
But it was not useful because due to the chewing of the rat, the barley fell, and it was so heavy that he immediately died.
다 땡기네 쉬에는 된다 안조 코알이 거기 다 번고코도 된대지 야레스.
So whether the story is actually true or not, right? Geshe said sometimes a story is just a story. It illustrates the fundamental principle, right? That samsara can deceive us. It can take up a lot of our time. And even if it didn't happen exactly as explained here, right? We can be sure that similar things have happened to many people. So it brings us back from this story with some advice, kind of reinvigorating us to study and practice the Dharma. Such dreams about the past and future will never come to fruition and are only a distraction. Give them up altogether, be mindful, and listen with attention and care. So this is advice that applies to our listening, to our study, and to our meditation of the Dharma, right? We want to give up those distractions. Do not focus too intently picking out individual words and points, like a dremo bear digging up marmots. Each time you seize one item, you forget the one before, and will never get to understand the whole. So Geshe said he's not going to go into this because this is the story that he's told you many times before, so now you know the source of it. I think I was translating the sentient being as a weasel, so I guess that was incorrect. It seems like it's a kind of bear. So Geshe is saying that this dremo bear that is kind of taking its prey like this is an actual animal from Tibet. Yeah. And because he's constantly kind of getting his next meal and he gets up to do that, the previous one he caught runs away. And so then it says too much concentration makes you sleepy. So trying to focus too much, too intently can actually make us narrow-minded and tire us out. So it's advising against that. So don't focus too intently, and also don't become obsessed with individual words and points, missing the whole picture, right? That's something that's also really unhelpful. So, not focusing on those individual words or points, but taking out the essential themes, starting with a few of those essential themes, learning those, and in this way, increasing your knowledge. So too much concentration makes you sleepy. Keep a balance between tight and loose. So the interesting thing here is that if we strive kind of too forcefully with concentration, it can actually make us sleepy, and it can also bring forth a kind of fogginess, right? A kind of darkness in the mind. Once in the past, Ananda was teaching Shrona to meditate. Shrona had great difficulty in getting it right. Sometimes he was too tense, sometimes too relaxed.
다 조된들 때는 그거야 뭐 저거면 아이다 다 손이 조된들 계시지 말에 조된들라 시비 제도된 바체 전화 니베제 비운데발라 캔섬수 대신도 개시비 제지 비운거 다데 지 하종 전발의 흉어 하조 해발의 슈수 대니까래 말로한테 저래 렘발의 흉화 시비 원아 제지 세조 되는 나와 수비 너네 리브 토바도
So, Shrona discussed the matter with the Buddha, who asked him, when you were a layman, you were a good veena player, weren't you? Yes, I played very well. Did your veena sound best when the strings were very slack or when they were very taut? It sounded best when they were neither too taut nor too loose. It is the same for your mind, said the Buddha, and by practicing this advice, Shrona attained this goal.
단데 민데지 템바서 그러다 간조 너지 고자도 되자고 알아왔어. 간조 고자다 고자사들 아니 차치 다테니 싫어 버게시고 차이라요 말이지.
Yeah, and so it's really important actually to keep this kind of in mind when we are meditating. This instruction to be neither too loose or too tight, right? The meaning of these words.
담보치 뭐 하고 그제도 하까 그 야가치 뭐라왔어. 다 쪼데 소소 그게 셀 샤도. 소아 소소로 요아이자.
Yeah.
소소소소 다치서 되지 그 말이지.
And so really because meditation is something that is happening with the mind, right? Whether it's too relaxed or too tight is not something that someone else can necessarily tell us. It's something that we ourselves kind of have to see through our own introspection.
제 마도 뭐제도 제 당연시나 요는 다가래 마도 파쇼 디겠다 다다다다 스프게 저한도도 하고 말아왔어.
So in this story it was the Buddha, right? But normally, like, no one can tell us really during meditation what's happening in our mind, whether we are too tight or too loose. So that's something that we have to see through our own observation.
어딘지 봤지? 말라데치 좀 그래. 아니 점무지 해지래.
Be firmly concentrated and loosely relaxed. Here is the essential point of the view. So this is a saying from Machi Glab Drönma. So we need to have a mind that is straight, able to focus, and the clarity and vividness of the object of meditation are both important.
But
that clarity and that vividness of the object will not be able to come about without a certain level of relaxation in the body and mind. So this is a really important point. So do not let your mind get too tense or too inwardly concentrated. Let your senses be naturally at ease, balanced between tension and relaxation.
Sami donga nyedo ya bandare gar kawa tume bepa to sosa bin jivte tan jiva tari sami donchi nyemband che kun di jai sama leji yembi chindi che da sa ka che cha zhong ji shu zeba sha go nyon ga ji zhou ji de nyegi ba yi.
You should not tire of listening to the teachings. Do not feel discouraged when you get hungry or thirsty during a teaching that goes on too long, or when you have put up with discomfort caused by wind, sun, rain, and so forth. Just be glad that you now have the freedoms and advantages of human life, that you have met an authentic teacher, and that you can listen to his profound instructions. The fact that you are at this moment listening to the profound dharma is the fruit of merits accumulated over innumerable kalpas. It is like eating a meal when you have eaten only once every 100 meal times throughout your life. So it is imperative to listen with joy, vowing to bear heat, cold, and whatever trials and difficulties might arise in order to receive these teachings. So we need an understanding that the practice of dharma is leading to an ultimate goal, which is that real and lasting happiness. Because of that, it's not going to be something that is easy to achieve. So we are going to require patience throughout our practice. That's very important.
다 뭐지 지지나 하고 그러was 다로살 자로모치 수신노 이깔 차바다 할레비슈 더버더버더니 비슈 좀 마도는 저자가면 돼.
Yeah, and so again, So we can see this in His Holiness the Dalai Lama, right? When he's giving teachings in Dharamsala, it's a place that has a lot of bad weather, but it's only when the rain is going to be completely intense that His Holiness will actually end the teaching early. So Geshe was just reflecting that one teaching he was at, he was lucky enough to get under sort of, it's kind of like a roof, like an awning, I guess. But there were many other people that were gathered to listen to His Holiness, and they were just kind of patiently sitting in that torrential rain, right, listening to the teaching. So he was quite impressed by that. So really, actually, the three types of patience, all of them are going to be really important if we're to achieve anything with our dharma practice. And so that is why it is said that a person who is endowed with a patience is one who is truly powerful. Yeah. So the 5 wrong ways of remembering. Avoid remembering the words but forgetting the meaning, or remembering the meaning but forgetting the words. Avoid remembering both but with no understanding, remembering them out of order or remembering them incorrectly. Yeah.
So
the 5 wrong ways of remembering, right, we can see that they are stated as wrong. So these are things that must be abandoned, otherwise they will prove to be obstacles to our study and practice. Do not attach undue importance to elegant turns of phrase without making any attempt to analyze the profound meaning of the words, like a child gathering flowers. So it's not really helpful to just grasp on to a few beautiful words, right? This is very clear from the example. A child will go to a flower garden and they'll just pick a couple of the nicest flowers and then walk away, right? Not coming away with an appreciation for the whole thing. So don't be like that. So we understand, right, that beautiful words are not the main thing. It's the meaning contained within those words. And it's from understanding and cultivating the meanings that realization is possible. So that is what we must strive in. So of course, there are many important things. There are many beautiful flowers that we can look at, various teachings and beautiful words and so forth that we can cultivate. But mainly what we want to do is make sure that they are leading the mind in the correct direction. So one perspective could be to think like how all of these beautiful words and meanings, they have to lead us to an understanding, a comprehension, and an actualization of the 4 noble truths or the 4 Arya truths. Yeah. And on the basis of those 4 noble truths, then these can be expanded to the 16 aspects of those 4 noble truths. And on the basis of a comprehension of those 16 aspects, one can bring forth a very powerful wisdom.
때문에 온 거라스.
And through these 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths, right, all of the facets of both the coarse and subtle of emptiness are expressed. And so from cultivating in that way, we can bring forth a truly powerful wisdom.
어딘지 왔지. 다 니빠 시에바나 치그 로인비 디 제샤뇨의 체드세네 대사모 빠져 시조 치라 마템바 대문주이 지대야타스.
So words alone are of no benefit for the mind. On the other hand, do not disregard the way in which the teachings are expressed, as being just the words and therefore dispensable.
다 치게야 말이 다 된다냐는 그래서 오다 기보시에서 어떤 데서 되게
So some people might say, oh, just, think about the bigger meaning. Don't worry about listening or learning the words at all. Just don't bother with that. Just do the meaning. That is actually not correct either.
다 대원 노아래 저는 대인적 기업 치고 커와라 선배는 가로서 뭐다 가로서 간걸 달로야 갈래 달로 좀 좋아하는 거 왔어. 디디칼 꾸와도 가리나 거지 봐도 들릴 마대만 놓사요 말에.
So, it's we actually need the words as like a support for going forward in our practice. We can think about it like maybe we could imagine that we're an older person, and when we want to walk, we need to have a cane or a walking stick to support us. It's actually in this way that the words of the Dharma function in our practice. So from that perspective, they're indispensable.
다 된노지 대게 내서 대포게 셀 비다보 야보 중앙시 될 로바 치거다는 로바트 땡보 그래.
So the words are actually something that are important from this point of view, in that they are going to be a support, an assist in our journey of practice. So that's how we can think about them.
그야 상가롬보시 답미어 든지 요츠 노지 순근도 왔어. 다이나요 될 배잘테네 팔로주 노지 고따게 요서 들이 순근도 왔어.
Yeah, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama, right? Even a great being like that, even at the age that he is at, he often says that he spends a lot of time reading and looking and investigating the words to this day.
어딘지 봤지? 다 선바 종에 내공제 수나초바노 dāne dā mātre bā zūna cī tō tēndan zōne yō tāpi cī tō jāngā.
Āre, ngā tsū?
Sāmbā.
Sāmbā tī yō mā re ngā la? Sāmbā kāwa tī?
Sāmbā tō jā mā tō ngā yō ki tā kā sī āchā rō bā.
Āle, kāwa yā rī, chī tā gō sā rī.
Chōngē.
Chōngē. Yes, okay, sorry. For then, even if you grasp the profound meaning, you will no longer have the means through which to express it. Words and meanings will have lost their connection. If you remember the teaching without identifying the different levels, the expedient meaning, the real meaning, and the indirect meaning, you'll be confused as to what to refer to.
다이온 때니 치도 때니 대단히 뭐 때니 라마체나. 오늘 오 거로 노소나.
야.
여자 친구 연구야 있어. 다 대폭에 도대근도 동의대근도 여와야고 시바지 그거야.
So because there was this danger when people were looking at the scriptures, that they would not be able to identify what the essential meaning was or the actual intent was, then there came this system to distinguish teachings between, so here they're saying expedient meaning, real meaning, and indirect meaning. But expedient meaning and real meaning is usually translated as the provisional, the interpretable teachings. And so those are teachings that need to be interpreted, and then the correct teachings, so definitive teachings. So the interpretable teachings and definitive teachings. That's the terms that are usually used. Sorry. So we also know, right, that the Buddha, his teaching career happened kind of in cycles. And so that's why we refer to the first turning of the wheel of the Dharma, the middle turning of the wheel of the Dharma, and the final turning of the wheel of the Dharma. So it might seem a little bit strange if we look at some of these scriptures that the first and final turnings of the wheel of the Dharma seem to point at some level of actual or inherent existence, and the middle turning of the wheel says that there is no inherent existence at all.
다 대지 존대근도 니대기도 야왕이 심마서는 드니 지지지보 ngoko는 빼다 롱가 노아질다 노아세야지가 말다 드니질
So actually, if we don't have the information, or we could say the training that we need to be able to distinguish between which of those sutras are provisional and which are definitive, we could actually find ourselves being led down a path to a mistaken understanding.
드네요 다디 잡고 마시다 코로파바 세네를 콜강에 첨보 트닝게 냥가 레비가라 파도만 세야이 아니 다 드네세는 오치
And of course, those of you who are familiar with the story of Mahinda, right, with these stories of patricide and matricide, it says that Padama Sepayin, right? There's actually a line in a sutra that says the mother and the father are that to be killed, right? So that's very dangerous if you don't know that that's interpretable.
다 대된달 가르스 말에 파쇼텔 대수자기는 코세트 변이 뒤자도 매도게 다 헬레테 차노로 왔어. 된달 자루를 가려 레도 녀모니도 부자래 사실이야.
But actually, it's expressed in those strong words to reflect an urgency. But actually, what father and mother mean in this context is karma and affliction. So karma and affliction are to be killed, which really means that karma and affliction must be abandoned. So that's just an example of if we don't know how to distinguish between what is interpretable and what is definitive, we can have some very mistaken understandings and go down the wrong path. And actually, the two brothers that we often talk about, Asanga and Vasubandhu, a big important reason why they came to the world was to help beings distinguish between the interpretable and the definitive. And also Nagarjuna, really to help us distinguish between so sorry, not Vasubandhu, Asanga and Nagarjuna. Their main purpose in coming to the world was to help us distinguish between the interpretable and the definitive. So one understanding of Asanga is that he was actually a Majjhimika ku umaparesine samba. But to kind of elevate the Umapa, the Majjhimika doctrine, he actually propounded and clarified the Chittamantran, the mind-only school, extensively. Whereas with Nagarjuna, if you look at his writings, it's very clear that he was mainly an expounder of the Majjhimika or middle way school. So actually we can look at Nagarjuna and Asanga as like the chefs who have completely prepared and laid out the food. And now through our study and practice, it is simply our task to eat it. Yeah, but you know, it's like somehow it's like we're just reluctant to actually take the steps towards that path, towards that table, and so we never enjoy it. Okay. So now we are going to turn. So now we are going to turn to our discussion of the Long Life Sutra. So I believe we are on page 6, according to Lama Dza Patrul Rinpoche's translation. Chupa puyi di droso sun dene nganso di re metok dang pi dang dinso pulna dene yangyar lo gya di tsele gire di jela tanda jampe yang re di re.
Jomba senje koda ten rosaru.
Mare, dene jampe yang dene di ola zung dir.
Ngaderwa. Ola jomba teta ina jese tendi ina ngamashi sarwa. Rije bomo to cherimon de pingarus kanga cherimon de barawa. De pi teji sheba chedo yipa de meba di che jaza je nietom. Igen dogom igen dunjuko luba cheba teta na yete to le banjawana data ko.
Sorry, sen denso jadang jerwa.
Yeah.
So, Manjushri, the life will be increased of any sentient beings who hears the 108 names of the unfathomable life and transcendental wisdom, extremely discerning aspect, victorious glorification. Those sentient beings whose life is nearly complete, by keeping this holy name, their life will be increased, Manjushri, because it is like that. The good qualities of any son or daughter of the race who, desiring a long life, either hears the name of the Tathagata unfathomable life and transcendental wisdom 108 times, who writes it, causes other to write it, or recites it, will be enhanced. And so Geshe said that that's, very similar to the other verses and expressing the benefits of the sutra. And then underneath this, we come to an explanation of the mantra geshe within the sutra, the Amitayus Sutra. So so Geshe said that because the zung, it's actually not really, a mantra is not really so accurate. We can say a dharani. Because the dharani appears again and again, right, there will be an opportunity. Geshe is going to try to explain the dharani as much as he can today, but there will be an opportunity to go back and explain more perhaps as we go along.
Om Namo Bhagavate.
So the first words, Om Namo Bhagavate.
Om Senata Teingedo Zol
So Om, in this particular context, right, it's a request, bestow the city of longevity.
Namo no shata Bhagavane tene tejishi ba segivares.
So So Namo is prostration. It's a verse of prostration. It's a word of prostration or supplication. And then Bhagavate, so that's like the Bhagavan. In Tibetan, the word is Chomdende.
Chodem sena chomba sena di chomba. Then demba sena leba pasoba kangata demba is demba sena alendres.
So Chomdende means to be able to overcome duji chombarwa, to be able to overcome the four maras. Den sena.
Den
means endowed. We can say endowed with these 6 excellences, but not only those 6 excellences, with many other positive qualities. Ale. Ale. So Depa is kind of like a beyondness between the extremes of existence and nirvana. Sipa dong
Shita
dong Sita Depa sana?
Sita.
Oh, sorry. So between the extreme, beyond the extremes of existence and nihilism. So Geshe was saying that in Bhagavati, the Tibetans give it as Chomden De. The De was something that actually was added by the Tibetans. He doesn't think that that meaning is in the original Sanskrit word.
Aparamitas.
Aparamita.
So
aparamita means limitless. Ayurjnana means life and wisdom.
This one?
Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Subinishita.
Subini Chitta. So we can understand Subinichita in a simple way as being without doubts.
Yeah.
So if without a doubt we are able to recite and practice the words contained within this sutra, then we don't need to have any doubt that we will achieve the siddhi, the ripening of longevity.
Tenzo Radzaya.
So that means like majestic brilliance or radiance.
Tatangatayas.
So Tathagataya. So that's Dejin Shepa, Tathagata.
대제 드셔봐. 소소 녹에서 년에 다들 드셔봐.
And we can understand Dejin Shepa as one who has really been able to reach that final place that one needs to reach.
아라하테 소녀 손비다야.
Arahate Samyaksam Buddhaya.
노다바 조베 손지.
So we can understand Arahate Sana Jachompadila
아라하테 노다바 세가 요한다.
So the ultimate foe destroyer and Samyaksam Buddhaya, the completely perfected Buddha.
따때야다 노지시라니 뭔데 따때 내레세 하나고 지레.
And Tayata, it's can be understood in the same way we understand it in the Heart Sutra, Detate, which is kind of like saying it is like that.
뻔해.
Punye punye.
세노.
So that means merit.
마하 뻔해 쳔보세노.
Maha punye. Maha means great, so great merit.
아파라마다 뻔해.
Aparamita punye, limitless merit, limitless merit.
빠드메바 냐 말라크 소살아.
Yeah. So that means limitless.
그래서 자나 소바 로바츠데 사시슈.
Jnana soba ropasite.
이시그토 사바.
So that
이시그토 사바.
Ale nganso tsedang yeshigitso yomarbe.
What 세상.
So the accumulation of life and wisdom. It means the accumulation of life and wisdom.
그래서 야다 옴사와 소카라. 그래서
Om sarva sukara yomare nganso.
요데 제가 뭐 담아.
Oh say. So om sara sukara.
토소인.
Tomason yine josho.
사와는 통제를.
So this means sarva means all.
사와 소카라서는 야 토제와 데지세도 안 데지. 소카라서는 데지레. 데지이사 데지.
Mitapa. And impermanence.
못하비 로바치래.
Si cancer drogi de tanda ganso aparamita punya drogore.
로차서 대차선 로차 가르세.
Om sara samskara parishudi dharmate gagane samugate swaba vishude mahayana parivari svaha. Didro mambochi dromasongi.
대시 워스티 선마도 근데 선마도 단단한 로근디 와스. 야 뭐냐면
Om Namo Bhagavate Aparamita Ayurjana Subini Chitta Tenzo Rajaya Tathagataya Arahate Samyasam Buddhaya Tayata Om Punye Punye Maha Punye Aparamita Punye Jana Soba Robatsete. Yeah, Dibaru Joso. Ale, dene Aparamita Punya Roa. Ale. So now we come to Om Saura Samskara. Yep.
Om Sawa Sana Tonje.
So Om Sara means all phenomena. Samskara we can understand as being the nature of impermanence. Yeah, Parishuddha. Parishuddha means completely pure. Dharmate means phenomena. Gangana means sky or space. So Geshe thinks here it's saying dharmate phenomena and like sky, like space. That's a way of saying that all kind of dharmas or all phenomena are empty like the sky or space. Yeah. So we can see from those words, right? It talks about the accumulation of the collection of wisdom through the jhana sambaro pachite, and then om sarva samskara parishuddha dharmate gagana. It tells you how you accumulate that wisdom, which is seen that all of the phenomena are completely pure. They are like the sky or space in that they are empty. So samungate has kind of a connotation of always improving or always ascending. Swabhava means nature. Vishuddha means completely pure. Mahanaya means greatly pure. Parivari means yongsu kongwasana soso dopanang means accomplished exactly as one wishes. Svahasana. And svaha is like exactly as one wishes, jitsukche, kind of firming that up. making that firm. It's like a firm basis. So in that way, we have completed the mantra. And so I just wanted to say, I think, Dave, I sent you the mantra, right, as it appears in Geshe-la's text, because this is actually really important, because the mantra or the dharani appears differently in different texts. So if you're looking at the text that you have and saying, oh, the mantra is incorrect, it's not that it's incorrect. There's 2 or 3 different editions of this mantra according to various presentations within the Kangyur. So the mantra that Geshe-la is reading, the dharani, is as it appears in his text. So, Manjushri, the lifespan of anyone who writes, lets others write, has made into scripture, or keeps at home and reads the 108 names of the Tathagatas will be increased 100 years from the end of their life. So actually, we talk about the exhaustion of karma and we talk about the exhaustion of life. So there's a difference in how these terms are understood. So there can be strange circumstances, unfortunate circumstances, where the karma of lifespan has not been exhausted, but one still reaches the end of their life. So clearing away not only the karma of a short lifespan, but the possible things that could cause that lifespan not to be met, clearing away all of those obstacles completely. Yeah, so we can stop there where it talks about the benefits of this sutra in terms of us having a long life, good longevity, and so forth. So this is finishes our brief comment on that for today. So thanks very much. We will now dedicate the merits. Changchu Sencho Rinpoche Maje Panam Chejurachi Chewa Nyamba Meba Yang Gone Gonde Bewar Sho Rinpoche Maje Panam Chejurachi Chewa Nyamba Meba Yang Gone Gonde Bewar Sho Yambe Pao Jidar Kyamba Tang Kundu Zambo Deyan Dejin De Da Gungi Jesu Dalo Chir Gewa Dida Tamshe Rabdu Ngo Dusun Shebe Gyawa Tamshe Gi Ngowa Gongla Chodo Ngaba De Dagi Gewe Tsawa Diku Kyon Zambo Choji Radu Ngowa Gi. So through the merits that we've accumulated, may we be able to bring about, to actualize all of our pure thoughts and aims, all of their actualization. And through the merits that we have accumulated, may all beings be completely dispelled of evil thoughts. So through these evil thoughts being dispelled and thoughts of a kindness being brought forth, accordingly with that, may all of the wars and conflicts in the world which are linked with evil thoughts, may these also be completely dispelled, and may there be peace and prosperity in the world. and may the sun of happiness shine on all 6 types of beings within samsara without exception. And may all of my study and practice be able to, exactly according to my wishes, become the cause of realization. And just as much as possible, I try to direct myself to a positive path, to what is wholesome. Through these merits in the future, may I also be directed to a path that is positive and wholesome. So we'll pause here. So questions are welcome if you have questions. So am I not hearing you guys? Because Geshe sees some hands up, but I hear nothing.
Hello, can you hear?
Maybe I should turn the volume up.
Oh, maybe you can't hear. Yeah.
Dave, were you able to find the version of the mantra that Geshe has? I sent
Yeah.
it in an email.
Yes, it's in the chat. Go ahead, Annie.
I was wondering if Geshe could explain the occasions that you would say a dharani mantra over a shorter mantra. Are there particular rituals that make you do those? Or it's very nice to understand the meaning, but I just wanted to know a little bit more about how that evolved.
Ngansu di zung dang ngak ki kepar kandes chikyo res roa. Zung dang ngak kepar chikyo roa. Ngansu ngak kyore dang zung kyore. Ane tutsu di zung kyor gores, tutsu di ngak kyor gores, di kandes hakor gores da wachita. Ringa din so da wachi zung roa.
Ta tedo sechime ta ngwa de suni cheba sana karsekta.
Zung sana di kangyor ginangula de zung den so di netso chikla tene dene tomba chom dende chikla net netso.
Ya ta zu teji ko non kan kare oda trike chame wachi ko lila botun chonro ares.
Yeah, ma dan den so.
Yeah.
So the Dharanis, or what the Tibetans call the Zung, there's a compendium of these in the Kangyur. So these were spoken as like words of truth by the Buddha to overcome like certain things, like famines and conflicts and stuff.
Okay.
Whereas a mantra is often recited to receive the blessing of the deity, or with the prayer that our body, speech, and mind will become inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of the deity.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Delicious.
Is there an occasion where you would just then do the dharani without not necessarily knowing the entire background of a sutra?
Do mepe kapula zung kyorya yorebe. Yes, there are.
Okay.
Karin sana zung chatsangwa do nangula yore. Then do di ma kyorne zung chikpo kyorya yorebe. Yes, the dharanis can be recited on their own.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, Geshe. I've got a question. The Langlai Sutra talks about reciting the 108 names of the Buddha, and I'm wondering, it doesn't seem that the sutra itself has that.
Tsedo ginangula tsen jadang je mambo chikla gredua ine do ginangula tsen jadang je denso yomares denso kareresa.
Mere marita te se ke sunju den de ke na mambo shetsu yo arwas.
Ale.
Ota te chikanga kaze la tona se yo jarwas.
Ale like tsik degarang jadang je yomares jadang je sana mambo da bochik. So
ende rumeda konta.
So Geshe said that he's not absolutely sure, but he's secure enough to hazard a guess that 108 is not to be taken literally. 108 is often used as a number of like expressing a very large number. So any of the names and epithets of the Buddha, to recite those as much as possible, it could be understood like that. But that is his guess. Yeah, so Geshe said that he will look into that for you, and if he finds something different, he'll let you know.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Martha.
Hello, Ngodrup and everybody. Okay, I was reading a little about the cosmology of Buddhism that says that in the beginning of the times, the beings in this world, they don't eat, and they live a long time, but then some beings, they lick like a plant, and they like it so much, and then they begin to make the digestion, and then the life was shorter. So then I was thinking, in Catholicism, they explain us about the fruit, that the apple, it was forbidden.
Oh, like Adam and Eve?
Exacto. And then,
okay.
But then, bueno, I was thinking, so now that you see that food is so bad, that is so poison with all of these bad ingredients, etc. So it's like, maybe the reason of the extinction of the humanity, it is because of these beings that at first they lick these plants. So maybe it's all about the food. I don't know if it's related. I'm a little confused.
I didn't get what your question was, Martala. What was you just want to ask Geshe about the story about the long life of those beings licking the plants?
Or if it's related that to the final of the civilization, is about the
to the end of civilization. Okay, I got you. Yes. Nanso tambo di mi denso halepe tutu rinpoche dua rwa nangpe jong tanana dene konso samsam like chichene lo chitong dabochi degire duas ine mi chikla tene koronso shingtong yena shingtok yena chik tane konso chele la tene troa chik nyongire dua dene troa di tes dechak chik kene dene konso chasang wa saning drogi dua dene drogo dang gyuma dang denso chatsangwa legiyores dene dela tene konso kala sagiyores dene koronso sopatangores roa dene dine se nyungru chik jogidua dene nganso tse nyungru drone di nganso mi tamagine so dabo chik legirebes di dabo chik lagiredua dene nganso tanda mi jigten di yopa gi tutsu zo da bochi droyere karinsena kala chichena nupa mepa dang sombo chaya
ta tedo roas kawato me merge kor shikata amaga kala koro trisana soni leve ya ndi chires
ya
ta kale ngaro sunde cha komba kya ngama komba ya isa o suni saya te trile
ya
so ha kor
less
ta ndi chene tani dur nonela
So actually, what happens with that story is not only do they get attached to like the food from experiencing that taste, but because they're attached to it, they start to collect the food, and they think, well, I'll collect tomorrow's food today, and then beyond a week, and then they start to hoard things. And then based upon that greed or attachment, right, there's also more negative things that begin to unfold. Yeah. And then on that basis, because people are trying to hoard the food, people are going to steal their neighbor's food and so forth, and people start to engage in the actions of the 10 non-virtues, and then this brings us into times of increasing degeneration. And then on that basis, right, because they're compelled into those negative activities, this acts as the cause for their lifespan to begin to decrease and decrease and decrease. So now we're in the time of about a lifespan of approximately 100 years, but the scriptures actually say that it will reach a lifespan of 10 years. There'll be a time when human beings only live for around 10 years. Yeah, and so that time of the 10-year lifespan, this is quite a long way off.
아니 손지 손바다다 가서 지금 그치 두았어. 오케이 그게 저라라 때는 오 막가게 될 가워지는 오다 야야야 앞에
And so then there'll be kind of an end to that human civilization beyond the 10 years, but then it is taught that Maitreya Buddha will come. And from Maitreya Buddha, the future Buddha, coming into the world based on his teaching of loving kindness, beings will again start to engage in virtue, and on that basis, the lifespan will start to increase again. It's to tens of thousands of years even, according to some teachings.
But my question is that is about, I'm sorry, my English. So the end of humanity is because they eat, is because relate to the eat, is because we eat. You understand what I want to mean?
I think he was saying more it's because the eating is relating to the hoarding and then people steal in the 10 non-virtues, right? But I'll ask back. Dene nganso mi pet mepa soedi durudroedi sayala tene chungores la tugirebes. Konso kala sayala tene da wachi nyoro tu soe.
Kala sayala tene.
You could say that's where it started. Yes. You could say that's where it started.
tombo konzo kala sena sakenza chiwar deshin boto hachi mumachigasa tene tela tene poyo umbo to kanga.
Yeah. And also as part of this story, right, when they start to eat the food, as you said, they start to have a digestive system, and as part of that digestive system there needs to be a way to kind of exit the food that isn't processed in the body, and this also leads to the male and female sexual organs, which also leads to a lot of sexual desire and attachment. So this is part of the story as well. Yeah. But you could say, yes, it started with that eating of the food. That's where it started. Because based upon that first eating of the food and the development of the attachment and so forth, a lot of the positive qualities that those beings had, these start to get eclipsed like by that greed. In fact, it is said that like those early beings, they initially possess like a radiance within their bodies, and one of the first signs of the degeneration is that that radiance begins to decrease. So in the cosmology, there's actually very extensive explanation, but this is the basics. And actually also in some of the tantric literature of taking of the three bodies, there is also a very extensive explanation of this. Anybody else? Did that get your question, Martha?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay.
So it makes me think about the importance of what you eat. I think so.
Yeah, saya dan kala satan di tetsanlo tango gire dua.
Yeah, tene kala mombo sakite ta ngazu to tanda de chibara was tesis jas bokesa wo chando tene phaji chala ja.
Parsi chala ja.
Sale oko ta le kesa chasu se anda tene phaji la tene no mo tu.
Yeah, Geshe said also, like, you know, based upon our eating, like people start to have like different bodies, maybe fit and less fit, and then we start to judge other people or say like this person looks good, this person doesn't look good, and that also leads to like disagreements, low self-esteem, all kinds of things. Next question.
There's a question. The question on Facebook. I'll read it out here.
Sure.
This is from April. I am new to your community and I'm very grateful for our paths to have crossed. Although so many of the terms are new to me, I'm very drawn to your teachings and find peace of mind while listening. Please tell me how I can show my appreciation and support.
Ko mitet sarpare dua ane nganso di tanye chutsik dinso mambo hako gyomare sine gengi sungshu dinso peya dang shebochi gaswas ane ko kandrin di par training drogi duas dene part teagi tap yaksha kareres ko che tes gane dene kandes ropa che tugires di segre.
Mata tangi menda pisa was dene menda papi jande yares.
Mande papunesen?
Menda degin duas nganso menda piri pingi yaros.
Yeah. Yeah. So Geshe said that like actually it's part of this is built into the prayers that we recite, right? So when we offer the mandala, that's kind of like visualizing a gift that we make for the teachings. And then from Geshe-la's side, also taking a moment to dedicate your merits to something positive and also to everything going well here. You could also do that. Books are very quiet today.
Go ahead, Manoshi.
Yeah. Okay. Hi, Geshe and Kendra. Thank you so much.
Microphone.
Oh, sorry. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Thank you for the teachings, as always. In the beginning, Geshe spoke about in the Padmakara edition about how we make plans and they never come about, not being attached to our future plans, and because they can confuse you. But, one of the things Geshe often says is when we do our practice, the first thing we do is we motivate, right? We say our motivation, we dedicate, towards reaching enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. And so in a way, that's a future plan, right? We're always trying to, we're taught to always try to motivate our practice and think of our practices for some future time when we reach enlightenment to benefit sentient beings. And if you look at lamas, great lamas, they make great plans for like building monasteries, building centers, building, many virtuous stupa projects and so on and so forth. That's a future plan. So how do we, perhaps this is an observation or a question, I'm not sure. Maybe Geshe can comment on that, the balance between being future plans and staying in the present moment,
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Was
it too long? Sorry.
No, he says he thinks your question might be difficult, but it's not difficult.
Sorry.
I'll explain. It's good. It's all good. It's funny though, because as you were giving the question, there was a sound it sounded like someone filing their nails. So I don't know, that came into my mind, but it wasn't too long, Manoshi. No. I got your question. No, it's all good. It's all good. I got your question. Nganso kadi ne charshi sogoye mandu segre duarwa. Then nganso di ine nganso kunlong kedu di maunbegi charshi reduas. Nganso di micha samagi chedi sangi ki gopang tobchi gogi redu samlotane di charshi reduas. Ane lama denso konso gumpa jenya dang. Choten stupa denso dapo jenya dang denso chatsong yang maunbagi charshi reduas. Ine di jungdi nganso di maunbegi charshi gokor ma de davochik yore dua tene di kandeschik hakogresa.
Me ta tejido nganso pge nyole chachi jujure duas. Anda se de adi gambado chizu do hakoswa. Ta tejido koro pge senje de chachi jujure was teji go yare.
So Geshe said, the caveat here is that Manoshi, the activities that you mentioned, right, of the great lamas doing, and indeed all of the activities that we do for example, like establishing and trying to grow a dharma center, building holy objects and so forth. These are all done for the welfare of sentient beings, right? Not out of personal interest. So in that way, they're quite different from what was being described in the text here.
다 단다 때도 간저 처음에 배도 매비가 다 그게 좋아도 너도 뭐뭐 지네 다 디거트네 녀레 때 몸에 봐 또주 때 몸에 봐 디거 빠져셔야 되지.
So the examples that were given in the text were like worrying about worldly things, obsessing over worldly things that leads to a lot of namtok, a lot of false projections and hopes and fears and so forth, and thinking in that way, right, rather than the previous examples. This will actually act as an obstacle to our dharma practice, and that is why those things need to be reduced, why they're discouraged. But Geshe said your point is a salient one, in that both of these are examples of things that are thought in the future, like thoughts of the future. So in that way, you're absolutely right, that there is a paradox here. But if we look at the monastic, like the monasteries and the nunneries, the monastic institutions, right? Like, yes, like there was a lot of planning that went into establishing those institutions and running them and thinking about the future. But if we look at the impact of those institutions, really they were so crucial in allowing us to be able to enjoy the stream of the Buddha's teachings of Dharma up until that day. It really depended on those activities.
다 셜로를 치세나 뭐든 슈 실을 다 뒤차나 어디 치소를 지게 지는라. 다 보게 생지게 된다 손정 대시 손지게 된다. 나때 뭐자 강가야고 그 알았어.
And so in the West, conditions are very different, right? So we have something that we call a Dharma center, but it's with the same kind of motivation, wanting to establish the causes for the Buddha's Dharma, his teachings, to be able to continue in the world, and for there to be a sustainable, right, a long-lasting source of benefit to the welfare of sentient beings, right? So it's very similar in that way.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome, Manoshi. You're welcome. You're welcome.
But you know, like personally, if you take it on a personal level rather than the big level, like when you think about monasteries and things like that. But if you sometimes I get a bit overwhelmed. You know, the thought of reaching enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings is a wonderful, it's obviously very virtuous in what we're encouraged to think, but it's very long off. You know, it's very far away, and there has to be steps in between, right? Like practical steps. We have to live in this life. We have to earn a job, earn a living. We have to live, right? So I guess it's a matter of motivation. I'm sorry if I'm, why
I get
you
what
do
you're
things.
saying. I'm just trying to see what what your question is, where you're asking for clarification here.
Yeah, no,
Like
perhaps it's just a comment. Like you
to
have
balance?
to balance the long
Yeah.
term and the short term. The reality is we're here
Yeah.
now. We have to live.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Yeah, nganso chirta nganso di jangshub thob gores di mikyu halepe chambo chikres ro semchin thamshe gi chedi sangi go pang thob gi samna di yabo yeres ro ine nganso yang tets dawa jema ro kangla te dama te dang drakti dinso tets gogre dua ro dinso chikyang samlo ma thangna de
말은 말대지도 그거 왔어. 그게 자체로도 다 그야 주주래서 니가 샤워내서 뭐 왔어.
Yeah, so Manoshi, in answer to your question, Geshe would say that yes, like we do need to be practical, and so that means having plans in place for our temporary needs, our temporary basic needs. Absolutely, yes.
수바 침보이나래 그 기는 멋지나래 너무지나래 수바 침보이나래 룸바이나래 장그러 멋지깔로 소지되라.
Yeah.
레와야사니자.
Yeah.
하고서
Yeah.
자디 비싸니시.
Yeah. So His Holiness the Dalai Lama often talks about this, and it's something that really holds, whether we're just thinking about like our own kind of maintenance, whether we're thinking about the maintenance of our family, whether we're thinking about the welfare of a country. And as I understood the Tibetan, it means something like, place your hopes for like the best possible outcome, but prepare for contingencies. And that's a very important piece of advice. And actually, like that, although it's just a very short piece of advice, there's a lot that we can think about and understand just from that. Yeah. Yeah, and then when we think about our life, about our maintenance, about relations between countries and so forth, this advice holds for all of that. So why do we want to place our hopes in the highest and continue to hope in kind of very expansive ways? Because actually that is what allows us to establish a courageous or a brave attitude, which is actually what is going to allow us to improve. But as we're trying to reach those supreme hopes, right, the fulfillment of those supreme hopes, there's going to be a lot of obstacles that are going to arise just kind of in our everyday experiences. And so we have to be prepared to face those obstacles. So that's why we also need to consider contingencies, right? Consider alternate things that could happen.
바지 침보시는 데리 다디제 바지 주주시는 데리 다디소야 뭐 하러.
So we should think and prepare for those, like, right, if there's like a minor obstacle, do I have the preparations in place that I need so that that's not too much of a hump? If there's a major obstacle, do I have some idea of what I could do to maybe cope with that? So, certainly these are things that we need to think about.
다디시니도 맹아주 강갈 발레비 같이 모르다스. 뭐제질 보긴도 또 이나요 가리나 가와잖아.
And so that placing those hopes, but also being aware of those contingencies, this is something that is very, very important for us in our lives.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes,
Go ahead.
Steve's made a suggestion here. Do we have time for the Patrul Rinpoche story about his impure view of an important teacher of his?
Oh, yes. Ngama Geshe la di Patrul Rinpoche gegen ko la tawa Ngodrup chikla tene ko kange chunsun dene tawa Ngodrup di mepo sotusuns shegi ins kelen sore du adi tes shero shesa. He said Steve's too late. Whatever. So Geshe said, because Geshe at first was saying, oh, there's not enough time, and then I was saying, hey, we could go a little bit over. So Geshe will tell the story in brief today. So Dza Patrul Rinpoche met a particular guru or teacher of his. So when he met this particular lama, actually that lama said to Patrul Rinpoche, it's not actually the time for us to connect. Your affinities are with this other teacher. So he actually sent him away to someone else. Yeah. And at first, right, he had to search for this teacher because this teacher was not so findable. So Patrul had to look for him in many different places. So as Patrul was looking for this person, right, he was trying to enlist some help because he wasn't able to find him. So he started asking some of the people who was encountering, like, have you heard of this lama? And they said, well, what is the lama's name? And he told them, and they said, and they kind of laughed at him. They said, oh, that's the kind of person you want to see as a lama? Okay, well, you have to look for him in this place. And it became very clear that this particular person who he had been sent to see, he was somebody who was regarded actually in a very negative way by most of the people. So eventually, Patrul Rinpoche was able to kind of locate where he was, and so Patrul went up a mountain to go and meet him. And so he encountered and he realized that yes, this is like the correct person. And so he was kind of hanging around and he started to observe that this lama actually, he was killing a lot of sentient beings, like almost all of the time. So Geshe, the story is actually quite long. So Geshe is trying to give you the essence.
Uh-huh.
But Patrul, basically from observing all of these things that the lama was doing, he started to develop quite a negative view. And so Patrul thought to take his leave. So he asked the lama, and the lama said, you're free to leave any time. But know this, if you leave now, you can't come back. And so Patrul started to like be a little bit worried and to think like, what should I do?
다 깨져 타마듯이 해서 맞아. 내가 못 하는 거야. 다 니마 질 다 보고 추추 생제. 리다.
Rida.
할래비 생제 추추.
Shower. So, to make a long story short, we'll come to kind of the last vignette of the story. And so, Patrul came in and he saw the Lama with a baby deer.
아니 대대 코로미가 도사를 봤어.
And the Lama killed the baby deer, killed the fawn in front of him.
어디 다자 빠트 배다 할때 타마타마 할래야 되랬어. 다 내도 치는가 대하면 당가 손님 다 거기 있을 타지 말했어.
And Patrul was both saddened and disgusted, and he thought, this is not the kind of person that I can be around. So he told the Lama, tomorrow I'm taking my leave.
어디 다 니마 다 거니 칼라선 대비가 했더니 거기 다 요하러 왔어. 네, 다 칼라테스 당게 생제 세자이 시시서 요하러.
And so they took a last meal together, and Patrul could see that at the side of the table was a dish made out of the flesh of the fawn that Lama had killed.
다 본다 나 치시가 레바 이 거버가 레바 이 나 겨라지 파스시 디파만서야 문데.
And so Patrul said, firstly, like he wasn't going to eat that, and he said, I came here to practice dharma, to increase my virtue and decrease my non-virtue. I didn't come here to engage in sin. So I'm definitely going to leave. And so as he was saying this, the Lama took out a very long pipe and he began to smoke it. And so he was smoking, and then as kind of the tobacco or whatever was in the pipe dried out, he dumped out the ashes onto the table. And he mixed the ashes from his pipe together with the meat that was prepared from the flesh of that fawn. And as he was doing this, the Lama began to contemplate, and slowly, as the ash and the flesh mixed together, it transformed into the fawn, and the fawn was able to scamper away. So after this had happened, the Lama said to him, you think that I am engaged not in the works of Dharma, but in worldly works. Not only that, but in works that will lead to rebirth in the lower realms. So if this is your opinion, you should definitely leave. But Patrul, of course, seeing what had happened with the fawn, his mind had completely changed. And in fact, he developed great faith in that teacher. So he apologized and he explained that he wanted to stay, that he would not be taking his leave. And after he said that, the Lama took his slipper and hit it's not a slipper, sorry. It seems like a long kind of a shoe or a traditional Tibetan boot. And he hit Patrul 3 times on the head with that. On that basis, Patrul was able to bring forth like a spontaneous samadhi, or single-pointed concentration. And he stayed with this teacher for a week, and he received many mengak, in essential or pith instructions. And then at the end of the week, the teacher explained to him, he said, these are all the instructions that you need to receive from me, and you can practice these to realization. And so after a week, Patrul Rinpoche was able to leave. And the Lama said, you actually don't need to return to this place. You should leave with the instructions that I've given you. And if, as you cultivate these instructions, you have doubts or questions, just visualize me and make a supplication to receive an answer, and you will receive an answer.
다 nga사를 맹아 들이라시 nga탄 들이지 여보 쳤어야 대치스지 라추 말이스.
And another thing, you are never allowed to say that I received essential instructions from this Lama and therefore I have come to realization. You cannot say that to people.
다 가르에서는 류마디가 다 뭐도 세이나 코 두자스 통대야 이제 디페도 말이스.
And this was because, this Lama, who was actually like, a great being, he knew that because of his outward behavior, right, that people had a very poor view of him. And if Patrul started to say things like that to people and they came seeking instruction, it wouldn't be anything of benefit. And then we can see also from this text and from Patrul's other activities that based on cultivating those essential instructions, he became a very great practitioner. Yeah, so this Lama surely was different from most ordinary Lamas, was, a great siddha. This is quite clear. And there's actually other stories about him, some that would be almost difficult for folks like us to believe. So not all of them are so easy. So that was the story, and is it maybe a good time to leave it there then?
I have a question. Was that the three pointing out? That I think that's what it's called. The 3 point.
You mean the instruction that he received?
Yeah.
Ko lama ne mengak di sem ngosung yagi mengak rebesa. Geshe is not sure, but he thinks it is very likely that yes, it was a pointing out instruction. Yeah. And actually the pointing out instructions it's actually kind of on the coarser level. Based on that, there's even higher, more subtle things that can unfold.
Okay, because I knew that.
Sorry, I can't hear you. Say again.
That he had wrote about the 3 pointing outs as well as the text we're studying. So I was wondering if that was connected to the other text he wrote about the 3 essential pointing outs, like a dogen teaching that based from what was his name? Garib Dorje.
Oh, okay. Ko Garib Dorje zogchengi netso sem ngosunya tso sum dabo chikyeres. Di ko di Garib Dorje gi menga di dabo rebe samvidusa. Yeah, not sure. Geshe is not sure, but he said that certainly it's on the basis of those pointing out instructions that one can realize the essential nature of one's mind, right? And then one realizes the great perfection. Yeah. So it's actually called Introduction to the Mind, or pointing out the nature of the mind. But of course, within that are different sets of instructions, right? Yeah. So it's very similar, in fact, to going through an empowerment ritual and then receiving the instructions on what to practice. It might be a procedure similar to that. And the story, you'll notice, the story of Patrul Rinpoche and his teacher here is very similar to the story of Tilopa and Naropa with the fish, right? So there is a story, right, that one day after Naropa had been following Tilopa for a while, they walked together to the middle of a vast sandy desert.
다 드리면가 누가 소소 면라 피슈살 안 돼서 같이 되다.
And then Tilopa said, if you want instructions today, you better offer me a mandala. So Naropa had the instruction to offer a mandala.
면라 피할 다시 말해 되었다. 다 쳐요 말 와서 대처만 되잖아 그래서.
Yeah.
면라 지속하러 면라고 지속하러 와서.
Yeah.
아니 천만 되잖아 그래서.
Yeah. And so Naropa said, well, we're in the middle of a desert. So like what materials am I supposed to take that I can make you any kind of offering?
소소 짐바톤에 같이 지셔도 그래서.
And so Tilopa told him, urinate on the sand, and then when the sand becomes muddy, you can construct a mandala out of that.
다 들으서 다키 일하면 하셔서 짐바톤 대여하려는 그런 돈발 지슈자 그래서.
So Naropa wasn't too happy about it. So, but anyways, he followed the instruction and he urinated and sort of tried to put something together and kind of held it up to Tilopa, and then Tilopa picked it up and threw it in his face. It is said that after that happened, he spent 7 days in a profound state of samadhi, in a profound state of concentration. And he was able to reach realization. So, I mean, long story short, right, these are kind of unfathomable activities that are kind of difficult for us to comprehend. So Geshe said that maybe we can stop here if there's no more questions.
B has her head up.
Yes, go ahead.
I have to ask, whenever I hear a story like this, what is the moral of the story? I mean, the first story. Why?
The one about the baby deer, you mean, with Patrul?
And also before that, Patrul Rinpoche observed this teacher kill many lives. And then he killed the deer. And then he brought the deer back to life. So what's the whole purpose of doing all of that?
Patrul Rinpoche ko lama di tene, dene lama di duksha mambo sone, dene drung di gidonda kareres, ganso lama chik tane konso chawa duksha sona donatego mare, ko kare chene dende dabochi ton songane, ganso drung di ne kare hako goresa.
Mare. Tenda lama mate ngel tache mozo yo yare. Wonno kangalolo utadare yo me tae yare.
So, if we take it in the correct way, Geshe thinks that it's helping us tread the line between, we have to engage in the process of observing the teacher, and it's clear that Patrul Rinpoche did that. But at the same hand, we also have to know that sometimes the appearances that we observe might not be completely reliable. So the story also illustrates that.
But that is very unfair. Because we are speaking for myself, not you guys, myself. I'm a totally afflicted sentient being. I have totally no capacity to see any pure visions.
But Patrul's different from us, right?
Well, it wasn't just Patrul Rinpoche. It was also the people in the town who had a very bad negative view of this teacher. Just never get to the point of, because Patrul Rinpoche did not show these other people how he could bring a dead animal back to life. So Patrul Rinpoche only showed these other people half the story.
No, Patrul Rinpoche didn't show them anything. They already had that view of him before Patrul Rinpoche came.
The teacher showed Patrul Rinpoche from beginning to the end, because so Patrul Rinpoche was able to see how realized the teacher was when the animal was brought back to life by the teacher. But that teacher did not show the people in the town that part. So those people actually remain in the place where they had a negative view of a very realized being. So how helpful is that to those people?
Tenda zo de kareresena.
Yeah, mare ngachi parla gore maduje nama drogo mare. Ko di halepe duksha chikre duas karinsena lama di ko semchen den so chatsang wa korang chawa den so tane konso halepe nangwa duksha chik legire duas. Yine konso Patrul Rinpoche nangshin tama zutru den so tongtu maswans. Dene zutru den so ma tane konso kadi yene tawa duksha chik yore dene konso digpa chik sagire duas. Then di yapore manduas. B, I would say it's similar too to the story of Maitreya, right? When a Sangha came and took Maitreya out on his shoulders, right? Nobody saw that. There was one old woman who saw one thing. I think it was his toe or something, but no one saw that, right? Kind of same thing.
다 된다 대치도 좀 먹겠어야 하고 말이 그렇스까리 유명해요. 다 노아 강가는 예밤에 봐도 하고 그 말에 소지.
Yeah, so Geshe said, you know, like with these stories, like, yeah, he doesn't think we have to like read too much into it. We have to think what is the essence, and the essence is check very carefully, but also we can know that appearances are not sometimes reliable. That's the message, right?
지체는 아마 걸어가다 배도 있더니 까오면 이사 마대로 되는 거다 지체 뭐 요시기로.
Geshe said also karma is something unfathomable. There could be a very particular reason that the Lama needed to be there and to manifest in that way according to the people in that village, right? Like we don't also know the whole story behind all of that. There, even if we look at the previous life stories of the Buddha, you know, some of them might not immediately kind of make sense to us. Like for example, it doesn't necessarily make sense like why one would have to give up one's own life or whatever, like a human life to give to one sentient being, and this is for the sake of the dharma, right? Like those things might not be immediately understandable to us, really. So Geshe is just going to say that he thinks that this story, right, is, you know, we don't know all the background behind it, like, you know, so we don't want to get over invested, but it's just telling us that all appearances are not reliable. But also remember, don't just get stuck in one words. Think about the vaster thing. And so Geshe said in the same way, that's not saying that we don't check very carefully with the teacher. That's going to fit our capacity. Of course we do. Yeah, but Geshe said, like, he understands, like when you read these stories, it is kind of frustrating because we can't always comprehend the full meaning of the story. It's kind of like, what am I supposed to take away from this? So if we saw that Lama, we would have a lot of tough questions for him, right? We'd have a lot of tough questions to ask him, maybe.
It is emphasized in the teaching. Buddha himself and Bodhisattva about this aspect of skillful means. So we teach what the disciples are able to receive. And in this case, this teacher seems to be teaching the people in the town something they are not ready to receive. So I'm just, well, never mind, it's okay. Yeah.
Could I add something to that?
Yeah.
Patrul Rinpoche challenged the teacher. Maybe the people in the village need to challenge him.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that's a very good point.
So maybe that's the point of the story, really, because Patrul Rinpoche said, no way, you're just doing it on. So maybe it's up to the villagers to get it together to nag the teacher and say, what are you doing?
Patrul Rinpoche gegen die Halle Peduksha Mambulas und Cheron Peduksha Sogidu Dikpa Sogidu Stekune Yapoyo Mares, Dene Dela Tene ko Zutru di Tonswa, Chichana Trungsep Gimi Chikyang Ma Labne, Konso Gi Lobsen Dire Dua, Duksha Dendre Chik Tona, Dene Konso di Chik Laugores, di Kogores, Dene Dela Tene Konso Yapo Chaya Yore Duasa.
Yeah, tadi ducharo tungu yome mashida. Shato machome bachi tungu yares. Bandiga. Kangin no batani tege yome mashis.
Yeah, so Geshe said that's a very good point, and he thinks that that's very possible. Also, right, we just know that the inhabitants of the village thought that this Lama was, for lack of a better word, a bad guy, and laughed at Patrul when he said we wanted to take him as a teaching. But we don't know what they actually saw that gave them that impression, right? It's not clear. We only know through the eyes of Patrul Rinpoche what he himself saw.
Well, the fact that the villagers did not ask goes to show that they weren't ready for that kind of lesson.
Chichena konso lobsen di levyagi tutsuyo mare strong set gimi Patrul Rinpoche nangshin.
야, 데레 저도 데레 소 이도 데레.
Yes, absolutely. That's one of the main things to consider. Absolutely. Yeah. There is a book by Machi Ricard that came out called Enlightened Vagabond, which has the story of Patrul Rinpoche. So I'm going to take a look and see.
페나 샤리포도 뭔가 번더 도야가 까와데 손지 걸어라 문도 와스. 따터 만도나 샤리포도 뭔가 버.
Yeah.
손지 걸어 로마 차토야.
Yeah.
여보 차토야 돼.
Yeah.
손지 걸어 페나는 더 도야 말 까와면 됐어.
Ale mi jendakchi.
따터 파파 따터 만도나.
Yeah. So even we have these stories about like very elevated beings like Shariputra and Vajrayāna. They couldn't connect with the Buddha as a guru if they met the Buddha first. They kind of had to go through somebody else and be guided to the Buddha. So sometimes the karma plays out mysteriously.
손지가 니마치로 파파 따터 저로 사자들이 놓고 뉴스 같이 놓서 왔어. 파파 따터 공예시 침보야 이제 기타지서 야 다내려가 되려 뉴스.
Yeah. So the Buddha kind of told this monk who was the one who guided Shariputra and Vajrayāna to him. His name is in Tibetan, I don't know the Sanskrit, it's Pagpatatu. So he sent Pagpatatu to meet Shariputra and Vajrayāna. And Pagpatatu, he was an Arya, right? So he had some clairvoyance and he said, oh, okay, I need to meet Shariputra and Vajrayāna for a specific purpose.
아고서 근데 될라때네 다 릴라보고 돈을 거라니 때네 찌가 돈을 놓서 다좀 공부 도서 말해. 다 찌가 다른 뭐마도 도서 말하래. 그래서
상기 투네 카리세기였다. 바바타도
세제 바바타도 뒤에는 거기서 다 손지가 기투자 릴라보고 돈을 다좀 공부 도서 왔어.
But somehow Papa Tata, he was like, I would almost describe it as like an agent of karma, like an essential interlocutor, and from meeting him first, he brought them to the Buddha, and then just upon hearing a few verses, they say one heard the verse once, one heard it twice, they were able to reach the state of being a foe destroyer.
지마 손지를 깨져 저거도 손지 걸어라면 다 너희 가오메봐. 바바타토라마도 메봐. 간이 바바타토도 뒤에서나 치 술로가 찌니 릴라보도는 다좀 공부도 다시 와
So when they asked the Buddha about this, he explained that they didn't have the kind of affinities to be able to kind of reach him right away and benefit. They had to first meet Pagpatata and then be guided by him. And then in this way, they would be able to hear those verses of Dharma and be able to reach the state of a foe destroyer. And it's Kare Sutrim Guma?
손지게 수깔 간이 domba야 보냐. domba테 겨와야 본거니라. 다 대지 로자토 뭐뭐 본로를 때가 겨와티가 팬이라. 니바치 못 찾아서.
Ale.
대치 쇼로가 지수그리 덴바지그치. 다치 못 지수도 논소 다치 못 거도서.
But you know, so they had to have Pagpatata as the interlocutor, but then hearing those single verses of Dharma and being able to reach the state of a foe destroyer, that was related, right, to their past lifetimes where they encountered the Buddha Kashyapa and they made specific kind of, I guess, dedications to be able to reach realization through hearing this specific verse of Dharma. And so that's why even after going through the interlocutor, their enlightenment unfolded so easily.
Yeah. So
Geshe said this story about Vajrayāna and Shariputra, he'll tell you it in more detail next time. But as it is half past, perhaps we should end it here. Take care, everybody.
Oh yeah,